You check your account balance twice before a purchase you could technically afford twice over. Not because the money isn't there, because some part of you doesn't fully believe it is. That small flinch, right before you tap the card, even when the number says you're fine, is not a personal flaw. It shows up over and over in research on people earning far more than most Americans ever will. Your friend Tyler makes more this year than either of you ever thought he would, and he still flinches at the register the same way he did 5 years ago. There's a term for what's actually happening to him: the income mirage. From far away, it looks like wealth. Up close, it's just a bigger number standing exactly where the smaller one used to stand. Stick around, because the research on this is more counterintuitive than almost anyone expects. And by the end, you'll be able to spot, just by watching how someone spends, whether they're actually building something or running in place at a higher speed. Ask most people what solves financial stress, and they'll say the same thing without hesitating: more income. Get the raise, cross the next bracket, and the anxiety is supposed to fade on its own. Survey after survey from workplace research firms and major banks says otherwise. A meaningful share of households earning well into 6 figures still describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck, right alongside households earning a fraction of that. Income and financial security are correlated, but nowhere near as tightly as most people assume, and the gap between the two is exactly where the income mirage lives. Here is the first quiet rule almost nobody applies to their own life, even though they'd apply it instantly to someone else's. Net worth is not income. Tyler's paycheck says one thing. What Tyler actually owns, free and clear, after every recurring obligation is subtracted, says something else entirely, and the two numbers have almost stopped talking to each other. Researchers who study how people actually accumulate wealth over decades keep finding the same pattern. A person earning a modest, steady income who saves consistently will frequently out-accumulate a person earning several times as much who saves almost nothing. The relationship people assume exists, more income leads directly to more wealth, only holds if the spending stays behind the income. The moment spending keeps pace, the relationship breaks completely. There is a specific question researchers keep coming back to, because it tends to embarrass the assumption almost everyone walks around with. Take 2 households at wildly different income levels and ask each one something simple. If the primary income stopped tomorrow, how long could you actually keep living the way you're living right now without borrowing a dollar? The answers rarely sort themselves by income the way you would expect. Plenty of modest earners answer in years. Plenty of households earning several times as much answer in weeks, sometimes less. And the honest ones tend to look a little unsettled saying it out loud for the first time. None of this means income doesn't matter. A bigger paycheck is still, all else equal, an advantage. But it's an advantage that only compounds if something else is already sitting underneath it, and that something else is exactly what the income mirage hides from view. Tyler isn't failing at money. He's succeeding at a version of the game that was never actually the one that determines whether he's safe. If this is already making you look sideways at your own last raise, a like takes 2 seconds, and it helps this reach people before they build a decade of habits around a number that quietly stopped meaning what they thought it meant. The second quiet rule explains why so few people notice Rule 1 happening to them in real time. Lifestyle creep is designed to feel invisible. It never arrives as a single decision anyone would flag as reckless. It arrives as a subscription here, a slightly nicer version of something ordinary there, a night out that becomes 2 nights out, becomes a standing plan nobody questions anymore. Compensation researchers who track how spending changes after a raise consistently find that a large share of any increase in income gets absorbed within the same year it arrives, often without the person being able to say afterward exactly where it went. That is not a character flaw. It's a design feature of how comfortable decisions compound. Each one, taken alone, is completely reasonable. Taken together, over a few years, they quietly reassign every future raise before it ever has the chance to become anything else. Ask Tyler to name the exact moment his spending changed, and he genuinely can't. There wasn't one moment. There were dozens of small, forgettable ones, spread out over a couple of years, each too minor to remember individually. That's precisely why lifestyle creep survives contact with intelligent, careful people who would never make one obviously bad financial decision. It doesn't ask for one bad decision. It asks for 100 perfectly reasonable ones, spaced out just far enough apart that no single one ever triggers the kind of scrutiny a big purchase would. Rachel is the clearest counterexample most people know without realizing it. She earns noticeably less than Tyler on paper, and almost nobody who meets her would guess how far ahead she actually is. She didn't discover some secret Tyler doesn't have access to. She simply applies a rule most high earners never bother to write down. The gap between what comes in and what goes out is not allowed to shrink just because the number coming in got bigger. Financial researchers who've spent years studying people who quietly build real wealth describe almost exactly this pattern. The people with the most striking net worth relative to their income are rarely the highest earners in the room. They're the ones whose spending simply refuse to follow their income upward at the same rate. If you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time. This channel exists specifically to pull rules like this out of research most people never read and turn them into something you can actually use before your next raise disappears, the same way your last one did. The third quiet rule is the one that turns lifestyle creep from an inconvenience into something much harder to undo. Fixed costs only move in one direction for most people. A bigger mortgage, a nicer car payment, a membership that came with the new neighborhood. None of these show up as a single expense you could cancel on a bad month. They show up as commitments, and commitments carry weight that a discretionary purchase never does. Downgrading a car after a rough year doesn't feel like a budget adjustment. It feels, to most people, like a public confession that something went wrong. Even when nothing has gone wrong at all, they've simply chosen to stop financing a version of themselves they no longer need. Housing researchers who study spending patterns across income levels have found something genuinely uncomfortable. Households across a wide range of incomes report almost identical levels of financial tightness relative to their earnings, because higher earners consistently choose fixed costs that scale right along with what they make. The number gets bigger, the tightness stays exactly the same. This is also why the same household can feel more stretched after a raise than before it, which sounds backward until you watch it happen. The raise arrives, and almost immediately it gets pre-approved for a mortgage or a lease that assumes the new number is permanent. The old cushion, the one built around the smaller income, quietly disappears into a bigger commitment, and the household is left with more money moving through it and less room underneath it than they had a year earlier. From the inside, for the person living it, it often feels like standing perfectly still while running faster. The fourth quiet rule is the one almost nobody wants to hear, because it points a finger at something that feels harmless. Visibility drives spending more than need does. It always has. What's changed is how much visibility a person is exposed to on an average day. A generation ago, you mostly knew what the people directly around you owned. Now you're shown a curated version of nearly everyone, and very little of it distinguishes between a life that's genuinely secure and one that's leveraged right up to the edge, but photographs well. There's already a name for what this costs a household on this channel: the display cost, the price of looking like you've already arrived instead of quietly becoming someone who has. Behavioral researchers who study spending and comparison describe the effect the same way, over and over. The more a person can see of everyone else's spending, the harder it becomes to feel like their own is enough, no matter what bracket they're actually sitting in. This is why the income mirage tends to get worse, not better, as people earn more. A household making a modest income mostly compares itself to people making a similar amount. A household that crosses into a higher bracket suddenly has visibility into an entirely different tier of spending, people one or two steps further along, and the comparison quietly resets itself upward every single time the income does. Comfortable never catches up to comfortable. It just keeps being redefined by whoever is currently one rung higher on the ladder. If you've ever gotten a raise and couldn't fully explain where it went a year later, say so in the comments. you'd be in good company, and it's worth actually naming out loud instead of quietly wondering about it alone. Which brings us to the rule that actually fixes the other four, because naming a pattern doesn't undo it on its own. The gap discipline has to be automatic, or it doesn't happen. Every household that manages to escape the income mirage, according to the researchers who bother to study these households instead of the ones stuck inside it, shares one specific habit. They decide, once, what percentage of every dollar that comes in gets set aside before it ever becomes available to spend. Not what's left over after the month is done, what comes first, moved somewhere slightly harder to reach, before the display cost, or the lifestyle creep, or the next reasonable upgrade ever gets a vote. This single habit is the entire difference between Tyler's version of getting ahead and Rachel's. Both of them get raises. Only one of them keeps any evidence of it a decade later. Picture the two of them 10 years out, because this is where the pattern stops being theoretical. Tyler's income has climbed steadily the entire time. So has everything around him: the car, the house, the recurring costs that came with both. Ask him what changed financially, and he'll describe a life that looks different, bigger, nicer, more comfortable to visit. Ask him what he actually has, sitting untouched, ready to absorb a bad year without borrowing a dollar, and the number is smaller than most people would guess given everything else about how he lives. Rachel's income climbed too, just not as far. Her car is older. Her apartment hasn't changed much. But the number sitting untouched underneath her life has grown every single year, quietly, without a single dramatic decision behind it. Just the same fixed percentage moving out of reach before she ever gets the chance to spend it. Neither of them would describe themselves as disciplined in the dramatic sense. Rachel doesn't clip coupons or track every purchase in a spreadsheet. She simply removed one decision from her life, the decision of whether to save this month, and made it once, automatically, years ago. That single removed decision is doing more work for her financial security than any amount of willpower Tyler could apply after the fact. Because willpower has to be renewed every single time a new number lands, and the gap discipline doesn't. If videos like this are useful for how you actually think about money instead of just reacting to whatever shows up in your account, subscribing keeps them coming, and there's a new one most weeks. None of these rules are secret, exactly. They're written across enough research that anyone could find them in an afternoon. What keeps most high earners from applying them is not lack of information. It's the same pressure that built the income mirage in the first place. The assumption, rarely spoken out loud, that once you're earning this much, you shouldn't have to think about a rule as basic as spending less than you make. That assumption is precisely why the mirage works. It convinces capable, intelligent people that the ordinary rules of money stopped applying to them the moment their salary crossed a certain line, when in reality those rules never stopped applying to anyone. It's worth being honest about what this isn't. It isn't an argument for depriving yourself of a life you've genuinely earned, and it isn't a case for pretending a bigger income doesn't matter. It matters. It's simply not the whole equation, and treating it like the whole equation is exactly how someone earning an enviable salary ends up feeling just as exposed as someone earning a fraction of it. The 5 rules above aren't a diet, they're closer to a set of eyes, a way of actually seeing where a raise goes, instead of feeling vaguely good about it for a few weeks, and then wondering, quietly, a year later, where it disappeared to. Tyler will probably earn more next year than he does right now. Whether that turns into anything real depends entirely on whether he treats the raise the way he's treated everyone before it, or whether this is the year the gap discipline finally gets applied, before the money has a chance to disappear into a life that looks good from a distance and feels exactly like it always has up close. If this helped you see your own income a little differently, send it to someone who just got a raise. It might matter more to them right now than it ever could to someone who's already figured this part out.